As a resident of the Netherlands, I have often expressed my, shall we call it envy, of the UK and their heritage steam events. Even locations like Beamish Museum have more steam raised on a day-to-day basis than you can find at your average Dutch heritage site whenever they have an event going on. But once every 2 years, in May, an event takes place in the otherwise unassuming harbour town of Dordrecht, some 15 minutes outside of Rotterdam. An event which brings together even foreign visitors to come to see the vast gathering of exhibits. Dordt In Stoom. The event started in 1985. The inspiration had come from an anniversary of Dordrecht Station the year prior, where a scheduled steam charter drew quite a crowd. So for the debut 1985 event hosted on Queen's Day, the Dordrecht Tourism Board had contacted owners of steamrollers, traction engines, steam tugs and other such vessels, and of course the SSN, the Dutch Steam Foundation. On that day, over 40,000 people flocked to see the spectacle, and the town was keen to capitalise on such an event in the coming years. The next year's edition, 1986, the event was extended to be held over the course of 2 days rather than just a single day of festivities. But the event buckled under its own weight, and in future, the event would be held once every 2 years, making it far more manageable. I wasn't in a position to complain, as I was too busy with not being alive to do so. The event eventually grew in scope so much that a lot of foreign exhibitors and volunteer groups would eventually, exhibit their vintage machinery or crafts at the festival. Dordt In Stoom would largely stay the same, only 2 world events having had a significant impact. One was of course the pandemic in 2020, as the event is held on every year divisible by 2. The other, earlier one, had a far larger lasting impact. Brexit. Now admittedly, that might just be conjecture, but I always felt that after Brexit, there were significantly fewer things to see. Pounds by and large remain worth more than euros, but with travel to the Netherlands now being subject to, shall we call them, hurdles, for exhibitors to bring their steam engines across the Channel or the North Sea. Or, that is my theory at least. I don't have access to the hard numbers to prove that, but there was a vibe, so to speak. We do have the numbers for the 2026 edition of the event though, with the numbers being reported hovering around 250,000 visitors. For the first time in a few years, there were actually quite a few number of British exhibitors, be it for the traction engine display, the steam fleet, or the model railway show. But I'm getting ahead of myself. How is Dordt In Stoom structured? Well, the festivities run on a route called the Stoomrondje, or steam round trip. What this means is that you typically start at Dordrecht Station. From there you can either go down to the harbour by vintage bus, or you can go to a small exhibition of vintage lorries via the steam train shuttle. Usually I go into town first, but this time around I took the train first. In fact, I got the very first train service of the day. Now, this might sound odd, but the trains are usually my least favourite part of the event. The SSN, the Dutch Steam Foundation, remember, provides carriage and motive power. For the past decade, that usually means a pair of DB Bauerei 23s, or a 23 with the SSN 01 at the other end. Due to a lack of turning facilities or Ys, the SSN trains are predominantly run top and tailed with locomotive at each end. Thing is, I've seen the 23s so many times, I've kind of grown bored of them, if that makes sense. Now, please don't take this as an opportunity to comment something like, well, I live in XYZ country, and we only have one steam engine in the whole of the country, so you shouldn't complain. This is not the place for such a discussion. From the lorry lineup, you can take another vintage bus to the model show. Note how I didn't say model railway show this time, as there also was a large rink for driving remote control vehicles around on what I can only describe as an enormous version of those carpets with the streets on them, you know the one. Speaking of childhood dreams, here's a shot of one of the Lego layouts on display. Man, brick-built stuff can get so detailed. With the strong liking to German brands, the hall can be expected to have a significant presence of model railway layouts depicting German, Swiss or Austrian locations. But this year there were actually quite a number of British layouts, including a modular tail chaser working on a bone layout. Every section of the modular railway is depicting a location, some even depicting real preserved railways.
Blijft de beperking ook erop zitten met wie dat aan het rijden mogen zijn? Nee, iedereen deze gaat doen.
I actually met someone there who used to watch my videos. If you're still watching, I thoroughly enjoyed our chat together. Here's a East Anglian tram railway. And here's an N-gauge layout depicting a distillery. Outside the warehouse that houses the model show, there was a lineup of vintage tractors, my favourite being, how predictable, a wee Fergie. The Rotterdam Tram Company Preservation Society, or RTM, number 51 was also present. There's usually a steam locomotive of some kind set up either here or at the steam shuttle halt, but it was still nice to see the wonderful RTM narrow gauge machine trundling up and down.
Hij komt zo meteen. Doet hij dan? Doet hij Tommy? Daar niet tegen. Ja, dan tjoep tjoep tjoep.
From the show, you can take the ferry to the harbour. This time around, the wait was absolutely excruciating. 40 minutes in line in the sweltering sun, only to not even be let onto a steamboat. I got one of those floating dance halls with a bar and the round tables on the upper deck. I wasn't particularly bothered by the heat, as I was wearing my big hat, but still, the majority of people in line did not have such a big hat as I did to shield them from the sun. There was also this elderly man who kept trying to cut in front of me, who only stopped trying to do so when he tried to shove me back onto the jetty, only to presumably realise that if I didn't budge, he'd fall into the river. Also, I had my cane with me for the day, so I could do that dramatic thing where you just abruptly set your cane down right in front of their feet, not to let them pass. In the harbour, you can board some of the boats and barges to gander at the machinery on board, hey look a tug. Or you can skip the nautical stuff and wander over to the traction engines. Showman's engines and steamrollers also apply. But it's not just steam engines that move under their own power. Hell, it's not even all steam engines. There was this monster of a fire engine, and this horse-drawn fire engine also draws a lot of eyes every year, what with the clanking of the horseshoes and the fella on the back shouting "fire" every 4 seconds. I actually had seen quite a number of the machines on display during previous editions of Dordt In Stoom, but that didn't mean I didn't enjoy seeing them any less. Look at this colossus of a thing. I could genuinely stand inside its wheels. By this point, if you keep walking and you've passed the shanty choirs and funfair rides, you've really done the whole round trip. So all that was left for me to do was take the vintage bus back to the station, concluding all there was to see and experience. All in all, I'm of course a massive fan of the event. Though I must say the 2026 edition was all a bit same but different. What did surprise me was the large amount of young people and young families which came to see the festivities. Really, the only place where I didn't see as many children this time around was the model show. So, is it worth visiting? Well, first off, you'd need to wait for the 2028 edition for the event at the very earliest. If you are an aspiring YouTuber and you plan to visit to take photos or videos of the exhibits, well, don't. The footage I've been showing of the event is predominantly of the 2026 edition, but in order to get a collection of at least somewhat decent shots, I've had to collect footage over at least the last 4 editions of Dordt In Stoom. Meaning this video was quite literally years in the making. But if you've been to the event once in the last, shall we say, 6 years, then I can't with any certainty say you won't get a feeling of déjà vu. I, of course, will go and visit either way, as it is just spectacular to see and smell so many things chuffing away as part of a single event. All in all, what I'm saying is, you'll have a good time, but don't feel particularly bad if you couldn't visit this time round.